Welcome back to the next step in our tutorial here. So far we've looked at the how to draw the line art. We've gone through a bunch of steps to get it to look right. I'm not sure if I'm 100% satisfied with it, but for the purpose of this demonstration, I guess it works just fine. So now what we're gonna do today is we are going to clean it up. And if you're not familiar with the concept of cleaning up a line art or a sketch, it's the step where you already have a base. As you can see here, the drawing that we've done so far, but it's not quite clean. I guess we could go straight into coloring, but it would be ideal if we could have a clearer line art. And what we're also going to do is we're going to break it up into separate layers so that we can achieve a pretty Disney-like effect in terms of coloring the line art, so that it blends in more with the actual colors that we will block in when we arrive at the colors. So this, we're gonna call this final draft. We're gonna turn the opacity down. At this point I don't think we need any other of these layers. I'm just gonna create a group. Groups are right over here next to the layers. It's just a folder that you can select all of the layers, and I've selected all of them by clicking the first one, holding shift, and clicking the last one, and it selects every layer in between. And drag this into the group. I could delete them at this point, but I'm just in case I need them, the reference pictures and so on, I'm gonna keep them in there because you know, maybe I'm gonna need them at some point. So I'm creating a new layer on top of the final draft. Again, the hard round brush is what I'm working with, and I'm gonna pick the black color this time. And what I'm going to do is I'm gonna take the same material. For example, I'm gonna begin with the trees, and I'm gonna trace around this line art only where I know that they will have the same color, and that's the bark of each and every tree. So we're going. Let's just pick this place. Let's say we're gonna work on a 20 pixel. It's a bit thick, but I guess it works. So we're just going over it. And this time we are being very, very careful because this is the final line art, and it doesn't have to be identical with the one beneath. You can add tiny bits of detail if you have any idea of how you could improve here and there the picture. And because in the first stage we kind of rushed it to kind of just get an idea of how it looks like, the positioning, and so on. And we're also kind of trying to add some sense of texture and unity, and trying to make it look like it actually is a tree, that we're actually looking at the branches of a tree. And take advantage of that pressure sensitivity, you know. Don't press the pen all the time. Keep it light when you want to draw nice thin lines, and go in and add a little bit of pressure when you want to have like lines that are more, you know, thicker. And we do this all over um, the entire surface of our drawing. But don't forget that for example, if we go here and we start to trace this line, we stop here. We don't go in and, you know, draw the hand of the character. We just go, we skip it, because that's gonna be on its own layer. We just make sure that just the tree is being traced on this particular layer. And we're gonna see when we finish, we're gonna take some other element in the picture and do the same thing. But for now, we're gonna speed this up. We're almost done with the trees, but I wanted to tell you guys something. You gotta be careful to not obsess over details, especially when there are objects in the background. For example, these trees that I'm doing now, I'm not paying very much attention to them because they're gonna be in the background. A lot of times I have a tendency to, when I'm zoomed in, I don't realize how small these are in comparison to the entire picture. And I go in and add these tiny little details all over the place. And, you know, when you zoom out, they're going to be nothing. It doesn't really matter at all. So we're pretty much done with the trees. As you can see, there's a huge difference. They're much more cleaned up, hence the name. So we're gonna name this trees lines, and create another layer on top of that. This one is going to be for the leaves. So be careful about closing in any kind of gaps. And I'm going to tell you a little bit later why that's important. But for example, you know, the leaves are going like this. This little gap here, it has to be closed. And but don't obsess over this, because for example, you might tend to close this gap as well. It doesn't really matter because that's just part of the texture of the branch. So what you want to do is pay attention to gaps, but don't obsess over them. I'm gonna try and simulate some leaves over here, but again, closing the gaps. You might want to. You might feel like you have to draw each individual leaf, but that's not the case at all. You can just draw a few of them because the rest we're gonna indicate with using color and rendering and special brushes. The rest doesn't really matter. And this, because it's the background, we can just leave it like that. Over here, now this is a little bit confusing because this cloth, this piece of ragged cloth that comes from the Red Riding Hood Dementor figure thingy is kind of intertwined with the green stuff over here. So I'm gonna add some more green over here and continue it over here. And again, I'm doing this because I'm separating them into separate layers. Pay attention to what layer you're on. You might lose track of that a lot of times, especially when you get to use like hundreds of layers. I sometimes do that. I get to an insane amount of layers and I lose track of them, and it gets messy. Okay, that's done over there. Over here, thankfully we have made a design that doesn't really require a lot of layer division, because we only have a few colors. We're gonna have like the green for the leaves and the grass and so on, and then we're gonna have the hood of the Red Riding Hood. We're gonna have the fur for the wolf, and you know, maybe the sky. We don't even have any kind of lines over with the sky, but it doesn't. We don't have a lot of layers, is what I'm trying to say. And we are closing it in. Let's just move this out of the way so we can see what we're doing. There you go. I wanna add a little bit of more leaves over here, even though we didn't draw them in. Is that good? That looks pretty good. Maybe add a little more. Actually, no, because we're gonna crop that out. You're gonna see. Let's just add a little bit of texture here, indicating some leaves. Rename the layer green lines. It doesn't really matter what you name them, just as long as you know what they are. So name them something that makes sense to you. I forgot to add these lines over here because these are going to be green as well, because it's the grass that covers the branches, the ends of the branches. And the reason why we're doing that is because we're gonna select the trees and to fill them in later on. And that's it. I don't like this. Yeah, and the rest we're gonna crop off. Okay, so this is going to be the hood of this riding hood. We're gonna try to keep that. I'm thinking of a Tim Burton animation when I'm doing this. You know, something like The Nightmare Before Christmas, or that's the kind of style that I want it to have. There you go. And now this is the confusing part once again. We're gonna simplify that a little bit. Yep, works. This may not make sense to you, but I have the picture in my head because I know what I'm doing and what I want to do. And that makes it easier. And when you're drawing, you're gonna experience the same thing. When you're drawing your own concept to somebody else, it may look like it doesn't make any sense, but to you it will. Red hood lines. And another layer for the hand. I think it's time to just decrease this just a little bit, 17 maybe. And that's completely arbitrary. You can, you're gonna see for yourself when you're gonna use a larger brush and when you're gonna use a smaller one. That's all in your own preferences, and you're gonna get used to these things. Add those knuckles. Now add another layer, or Dementor hand lines. This one is gonna be strictly for the teeth, and I think we're gonna use it for both this guy's teeth, or girl, I don't know what it is. It should be a girl because it's the Red Riding Hood, but it doesn't really look like a vulnerable little girl. It's anything but. And we're gonna use the same layer for this guy's teeth, because once again it's the same material. Now add another one for wolf lines. Thankfully, once again, the wolf is covered in one color, so we don't have to worry about that very much. I'm rushing this just a little bit so I can keep working and talking to you guys at the same time. I could speed this part up, but just in case, you know what, actually I am going to speed it up. So I think the fur is done, but I'm going to go back to the tree lines and continue this until it reaches that point. Yes. And over the wolf lines, I'm going to create another layer for the nose, or snout, or whatever it is that you call it. And it's not only gonna be the nose, but it's also, I'm also going to use the same color for the eyes, the eyebrows, and just a second, and these lines next to his eyes. And I think I'm going to use the same layer, the Dementor hand lines. I'm going to use the same color for his eyes. And this may be confusing to you, and I'm going to explain in a bit. Both lines, let's not forget this. Okay, here's why I'm using the same layer for something that has nothing to do. Like, for example, the Dementor hands and the eyes of the wolf. Why did I use the same layer for the same lines? If you look, if I move these, they are on the same layer. So why did I do that? Well, because I'm gonna use the same color. You have to think in advance, what color am I going to use over here? And it doesn't have to be the same exact color, but if it is similar, then the lines can be the same color. And if this doesn't really make any sense to you, it will, I promise, as soon as we get to the coloring part. So until then, this will be it for this episode, and I hope I will see you next time with adding color. Dun, dun, dun. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye for now.